Hello, everyone. My name is Brennan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And welcome to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. I'm recording this on Thursday, and Thursdays lately have been the days where I've been running a series called Cinema and Star Wars, discussing the cinema that influenced Star Wars, as well as cinema that bears comparison with Star Wars. Today, we're returning to the master Kurosawa himself with his 1950 Oscar-winning classic, Rashomon. Seven Samurai may be Kurosawa's most defining film. But Rashomon might be his most complex. Rashomon is a Jidaigeki, or period piece, that tells the story of a murder, but the story of the murder being conveyed by different witnesses, and all of them telling the story from their own point of view. Now, it's interesting because the reason I say point of view is because the four stories, the 4 points of view, don't always line up with each other. So the idea that one could tell a story from multiple points of view and yet have those points of view be contradictory is a fascinating concept. And well done in this film. Now, this is a 1950 film. And this is really the film that put Kurosawa on the map. Really the film that made Kurosawa well known. Now, his great fame in the world stage would not come until, more recently. But really, this is the movie that made him a star. Now, it's very, very interesting that there is a concept that arose from this film. And that is called the Rastermon Effect, which we will get to in a minute in bearing comparison with Star Wars. Now, the movie, of course, stars some of Kurosawa's favorite people, such as the great Toshiro Mifune and the great Takashi Shimura, as well as many other familiar actors from his films. Now, it's the story of a rape and murder where the story of a samurai woman and her husband who are set upon by a bandit. The bandit kills the husband and rapes the wife. But the story of how these events took place is told from the perspective of the bandit himself the wife who was raped, the samurai who was murdered, and the woodcutter who found the body. The movie is interesting because it actually does not take place in the 16th century, which is when most Jidaigeki take place in Japanese film. This actually takes place in the 8th century in Kyoto, so that's a bit of a departure. Now the film is very good and complex in the sense that while Seven Samurai is fairly straightforward in its story, Rastermon is more involving in terms of its behavior with its audience. Meaning that it's not as straightforward. And the stories are contradictory. So it really plays more like a Christopher Nolan film. In the sense that it really involves the audience mentally. And that there's a lot going on. And so it really makes for a more complicated yet fulfilling experience. It won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival and received the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. And the concept of the Rastermon Effect has become a familiar term. It's the concept of the unreliability of eyewitnesses. So really, there's a lot to take in with this film. Now, in terms of scope, it's a small film. There are no big battles. There are no great castles and thousands of extras in costume. It takes place on a much more intimate level. And it's a bit more downbeat. But the complexity in a psychological standpoint, its psychological complexity is probably Kurosawa's greatest work in terms of being his deepest work. Rashomon is definitely worth the watch. The Criterion Collection has a great copy of it. In fact, the Criterion Collection has great copies of most of Kurosawa's films. And that's definitely the best place to get it, I think, because that is the best quality available. Now, as I said, Rashomon really put Kurosawa on the map. And as time has gone on, his reputation has grown bigger and bigger. And in my opinion, rightly so. So Rashomon, I highly recommend. And it is definitely worth the watch. And I hope that you enjoy it. But be prepared for something that's a little bit more involving than something like The Hidden Fortress or Seven Samurai. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and I'll be right back. So, here comes a word about our sponsor. Hello there, this is Brennan Marr, host of Page Turners They Were Not, a Star Wars podcast. And I'm here to tell you about Anchor. Anchor is the best way to make a podcast. Why is that? Well, first off, it's free. Yes, you heard me right. Anchor is free. Anchor has all the tools you need to make a podcast from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you on various platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can make money from your podcast. And get this, with no minimum listenership. That means you can make money even if no one listens to your podcast. That, of course, is not ideal, as Anchor will allow you to spread your podcast, bring in more viewers, and you can make more money because of it. Everything you need to make a podcast is in one place on Anchor. If you're interested, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you, and may the force be with you. Okay, we are back. All right. Now, based on my description of this film, you may be wondering, what in the world does this have to do with Star Wars? Well, quite simply, point of view. What does Obi-Wan tell Luke? What I told you is true from a certain point of view. Rashomon is all about point of view. Star Wars makes use of that in the idea that Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader, and Darth Vader betrayed and murdered Anakin. That is true from a certain point of view. As Obi-Wan puts it, and he says, Luke, you're going to find... What does he say? He says, Luke, you will find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own points of view. Definitely, that is true of Star Wars. Now, obviously, the greatest example of point of view is that scene. Or at least that in Star Wars, the idea that Obi-Wan told Obi-Wan told Luke that Darth Vader had betrayed and murdered Anakin. Later, it was revealed that Darth Vader was indeed Anakin Skywalker. Luke asks Obi-Wan about this, and Obi-Wan says, what I told you is true from a certain point of view. The idea that Darth Vader is a separate person from Anakin, and that he killed Anakin, but thankfully was able to allow Anakin to reemerge and kill Vader, quite ironically. So that's probably the most famous aspect of point of view in Star Wars. But I believe that The Last Jedi has the most examples of point of view, or the Rastermon Effect. And I believe that the director of The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson, who also wrote it, has said that Rashomon was an influence. Well, The Last Jedi is all about point of view. Snoke, Kylo Ren, Rey, Luke, point of view features quite significantly. So let's discuss probably what stands out the most. And that is the story of Benzola's betrayal. We see three different tellings of that story. One from Luke, two from Luke, actually, and one from Ben. The first telling we get is from Luke that does not really convey the entire truth, as he is withholding information. And as he is withholding information, the flashback we see is an incomplete truth. And that is of Benzola ringing the hut, crashing down on Luke's head right before he went and destroyed the Jedi Temple. Now, in Benzola's version of the story, where we see the flashback, we see Luke with a lightsaber standing over Ben, ready to kill him. And then Luke reveals the full truth, that he had been tempted to strike down his nephew, only for a fleeting moment, but that moment had dire consequence, as Luke had ignited his lightsaber. Now, in Ben's version of the story, we see Luke with an angered expression about to strike him down. But in Luke's full telling of the story, if we assume that to be the truth, shows his mistake, that his accidental ignition of his lightsaber caused Ben to think he was trying to kill him. And he was more like, Ben, wait! And Ben brought the hut crashing down. So that is probably the most famous example of the Rastermon Effect in The Last Jedi, is the stories of Ben's betrayal, told from multiple points of view. In fact, it reminds me of the Joker telling the story of his scars in The Dark Knight. Two different versions of the same story. Now, there are other uses of the Rastermon Effect in The Last Jedi. Namely, when Rey touches Benzola's fingers, she sees his future. Which turns out to be true from a certain point of view. She said to him, you will not bow before Snoke, you'll turn. Well, guess what? She was right, he did turn. But not in the way she thought. In fact, Luke had told her, Rey, this is not going to go the way you think. Rey didn't listen and she ran off. And because she had interpreted what she saw in Ben's mind, she interpreted it a certain way, which is not the way it actually went. There's the Rastermon Effect. Or not so much the Rastermon Effect, but the point of view. Rey's point of view. And then Snoke reached into Benzola's mind and said, I see him turning the lightsaber to strike true. He ignites it and kills his true enemy. Well, guess what? Snoke thought that was Rey. That his vision was referring to. Or thought, in reading Benzola's mind, that that's the future he was seeing. That then would strike down Rey. Well, turns out, everything Snoke said, turning the lightsaber to strike true and killing his true enemy, well, guess what? That was all true, but Yet again, Snoke interpreted it from his point of view. And didn't realize that what he was actually seeing is Kylo turning the lightsaber and killing him. Killing Snoke instead. Yep, point of view. So, there are many other examples I'm sure we could talk about, but for me, the greatest parallels between Star Wars and Rashomon are in The Last Jedi and in Return of the Jedi. So those are my thoughts on the parallels between Rashomon and Star Wars. Let me know if you see any more. Rashomon is a movie I highly recommend. Worth the watch, and let me know if you see other parallels with Star Wars. My name is Brendan Marr, that noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And thank you for tuning in to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.